cosplay world, welcome back. This is the second of a 3-part series of all of the props and accessories that I made for my wedding. Yes, we had a wonderful clamp theme wedding. In particular, this is Clover, the manga called Clover, if you're willing to or interested in looking up what this is from. If you're interested in seeing the other two tutorials, the wings and the flowers, check out finalcosplaycore.com for details on how to get access to the armory and all of the awesome content there within. But for right now, let us get this cannon made. I'm not exactly sure what to call this because it's like this bioweapon that's possibly a cannon or a gun or a sword. It changes shape very often through the series. In fact, getting the reference art was tricky, and almost every image the weapon was dynamic and changed in some way. So you'll see a lot of, especially Clover cosplays, where they just look totally different because they worked from one panel to the next. So don't expect a lot of consistency with cosplayers of this series, just because the reference art is so wacky and interesting. It's absolutely interesting. Anyway, my wife likes it, so we did the wedding based on it. All right. This is pink foam, pink insulation foam, XPF foam insulation foam. We're using this because it's a very light material. It's easy to carve, and it's relatively cheap per volume. It's about $32 for 32 square feet. It goes up to $35 sometimes here around Chicago. It obviously may vary based on where you're at. But you can easily cut it with a saw and refine it with a rasp or a planer and a sanding sponge. Pretty easy tools to get a hold of. The structural part of this is going to be the MDF wood, that is medium density fiberboard. And I use it because it's very easy to use in comparison to other heavier woods, and it's something that's light and can be added to the material fairly easily. It's just easy to use, put it simply, right? And with like not a lot of woodworking tools, it's fairly easy to work with. So what we need this for is to mount the handle in place, and also later we're going to be adding the wings. So we cut a hole in the middle there, which the handle is going to pass through, and we're going to put a ton of screws in here. The reason for this is we need to disperse the weight. Foam does not take very well to screws. The threading tends to rip right through it. So what's really going to be holding this together is that PVC pipe in the middle. The handle is actually going to function as a structural piece. We're going to cut some tabs into it and fold those tabs down to kind of sandwich the MDF so it can't possibly separate from the foam. The screws are working as a pin system to make sure it doesn't shift, and it kind of support in a way, but what's actually keeping the wood from separating off the surface is glue from the insulation glue that we've been using this entire time, Insulation 78, and the PVC pipe there. So we also have some 1/2 inch thick foam there for the details. The reason for this is I like to manage the layers in my carvings or my sculptures to the best of my abilities, keeping the number of layers to a minimum or to strategic locations. So you see the 1/2 inch sections are where we're going to have another layer of detail added. So we can work along that edge and create a place where a crack or does not arise. Now there's going to be a seam down the middle, and we're going to work to make sure that's not as noticeable as it can be. I've seen some people work with foam, and they'll use a very heavy, thick glue to stick these foams together, and so you'll have a very thick layer between the bits of foam, and that's more of an issue to cover up than if you use the special glue, the Insulation 78, which is very clean to bind these together. So to save myself a bit of trouble, we are using the Insulation 78. Now you may have noticed during the process I am not wearing a mask. I would highly suggest you wear a mask. I learned from this a terrible lesson of coughing for a long period of time, especially at this process with the sanding sponge, where there's lots of particulates in the air, and those particulates can get into your lungs and cause all kinds of bad times. I would suggest you wear a mask. Okay, so Just like most of my other foam projects, I'm going to be coating it and finishing it with plaster of Paris. This is going to even out any dents or blemishes or places where, say, my rasp dug into it or something like that, and give it a uniform surface. Additionally, as you might have noticed, we're going to be using the MDF plates to mount the wing sections. The wing sections are made out of PVC foam sheet plastic, PVC plastic there. It's an eighth inch thick, and we're going to be layering them over each other. Now, layering them over each other is going to provide a bit of structural support because they're thicker and therefore harder to, wave in the wind or bend. But also, you'll notice that each wing itself is got a bend to it, whether it's the middle one where I've got it down the center or the side ones where I've got that kind of bent edge. And what this does is it creates a more dynamic shape, and for the kind of stresses that are going to be on the wings to deflect those in different directions. So parabolas and edges make this plastic much more durable and will hold the shape much better. The most easily deflected one is the big center one in the back, but that's the lower detail, and so that's gonna be up against my arm and it'll be just fine. You can see that center, the center foam detail that we added in 1/4 inch foam. It's found in the same section as the 1/2 inch and the very thick sheets. It just looks like a big accordion. So if you're in the pink foam section, you should be able to find all of these. I cut a little indent in there and refined it with the rasp. And those little nodes, the little circular nodes there, they're just tips of PVC pipes. It couldn't be more than 1/2 inch, but they're important for the detail. So once everything's on, we're going to seal that up with some, gesso? Yeah, some gesso to smooth out the surface and to make sure that we don't get, say, cracking or peeling of the plaster Paris. Plaster Paris is more of a filler. The gesso gives the texture we're looking for at the end of the day. All right, now on to painting. So the base color for our gold is going to be tan. Sometimes you go with yellow, sometimes you go with brown. These are going to affect the overall color that the gold is going to have, because as you guys have heard me rant about transparent or metallic paints, is they pull a lot of the qualities from the paint beneath it. And so we want a very light, bright gold, or even like a tannish gold, like not a big shiny gold like you would get from yellow, maybe a little bit faded gold. So that's why we're going with tan here. The black is going to support the metallic blue and give it a nice, clean, crisp contrast to the gold. Yay! We don't want to dull it with, say, gray, which is typically the option for some of the other colored metallics, is gray. And we're going to be varnishing the whole piece and cleaning it up. Oh, right. Wait. One more thing. So the gold is kind of flat, and I'm going to do this with a lot of the gold sections here, as I'm going to come in with some brass and to highlight some of the details and the shading, we're going to put this darker metallic brass into the edges to bring out the details, make sure that we're seen in photographs. There are a few extra details there that layer over each other, and so if a flash goes off, especially with reflective or metallic works, those can be kind of lost in the overall texture there. So this is what it looks like. We're going to stick our hand in, and it's going to support the piece. This is the footage I got after the wedding, so it's just been sitting around actually for maybe a week or two after it's done. If you're interested in seeing the wings or the flowers, check out finalcosplaycore.com for those videos in the armory. Thanks for watching, guys. Good times to all. The next video in this series will be on finalcosplaycore.com. Check the link in the description for more info.